Welcome back to SecurityCompliance.io's CMMC Assessment Guidance series, powered by Intersec Inc. In this video, we will continue to discuss the CMMC domains and their individual practices, as well as break down information for each of those practices to better your understanding of their requirements to ease your journey towards achieving CMMC certification. If you are preparing for CMMC certification and would like to learn how C3PAOs will assess your CMMC Level 1 compliance, stick till the end, as this video is for you. Today, we're going to continue our discussion into the System and Communications Protection domain. We're going to continue with the second practice in System and Communications, which is SC.1.176, and that is about implementing subnetworks for publicly accessible system components that are physically or logically separated from internal networks. Let's begin with a discussion from NIST 800-171's source point of view for understanding SC.1.176. Subnetworks that are physically or logically separated from internal networks are referred to as demilitarized zones, otherwise known as DMZs. DMZs are typically implemented with boundary control devices and techniques, which can include routers, gateways, firewalls, virtualization, or cloud-based technologies. A little image is given there as an example to see how this is in action. NIST SP 800-41 provides guidance on firewalls and firewall policy, and SP 800-125B provides guidance on security for virtualization technologies to use as a reference point. Now, what does that mean in terms of CMMC? It would mean to separate the publicly accessible systems from the internal systems that need to be protected. And as we discussed in the previous video, and it's going to be even more relevant in today's video and this practice, do not place internal systems on the same network as the publicly accessible systems, as that can cause issues in protecting that internal system. To emphasize, physical separation might involve a separate network infrastructure, dedicated network equipment with separate LAN segments, and a firewall between the internal network and the DMZ segment, and a firewall between the DMZ segment and the internet. A logical separation might involve VLAN separation for the DMZ, supporting a separate subnet with routing and access controls between subnets. That might sound a bit confusing, but it's important to implement these to be able to emphasize that separation. Since a lot of the information provided might be a bit confusing to understand, here's an example to see that in action so you can get some sense of it. The head of recruiting at your firm wants to launch a website to post job openings and allow the public to download an application form. After some discussion, your team realizes it needs to use a firewall to create a perimeter network to do this. You host the server separately from the company's internal network and make sure the network on which it resides is isolated with the proper firewall rules. Hopefully that makes a bit more sense. Now let's extend that further by thinking about how that would apply to your own company. Here is an example implementation to see how you would apply this into your own situation. You need to separate the publicly accessible systems from the internal systems that require protection. That's going to be the baseline to get anywhere in this practice. Do not place the internal systems on the same network as the publicly accessible systems. You've heard this multiple times in this video, and it's going to be reminded because this is extremely important. You can configure this using the proxies, routers, and firewalls at your disposal. And then finally, the best step is to implement a proper DMZ for separation from your internal networks, as a DMZ makes this process a lot more simpler and easier to manage. Now let's go ahead and test our knowledge of all this information, as it's quite information heavy, and let's see what you understand from it. The question is, how would you physically separate an internal network from publicly accessible systems? Would it be A, put the systems with the internal networks in a different room? B, use a VPN on your internal network? C, implement separate network infrastructure, dedicated network equipment with separate LAN segments, and a firewall between the internal network and DMZ segment? Or D, VLAN separation for the DMZ, supporting a separate subnet with routing and access controls between subnets? Hopefully you picked C, as that's the correct answer. Now, this was just a little knowledge check to see if you were paying attention in the more information heavy parts of the video. So just make sure that you understand the differentiation between a physical separation, which is C, and then D, which would be the logical separation. Moving swiftly forward, the assessment objectives for SC.1.176 are 1. publicly accessible system components are identified, and 2. Subnetworks for publicly accessible system components are physically or logically separated from internal networks. Moving forward, assessment objects for SC.1.176 are going to be the same as previous practice and all other practices, so feel free to pause to take a look. We're going to go ahead and move on. When it comes time to finally being assessed, C3PO may examine one or more of the following artifacts for your organization that is included in this list. Making sure you understand and acknowledge each of these is going to be extremely important, especially for that assessment process time. So let's go ahead and go over a few of them to see if we understand them and have acknowledged them. For the examine method, they might look at your system and communications protection policy. They might look at your system security plan, a list of key internal boundaries of the system, or boundary protection hardware and software. They might interview system or network administrators, personnel with information system security responsibilities, or personnel with boundary protection responsibilities. And finally, they might inspect mechanisms implementing boundary protection capability. Here are some references to existing security standards that relate to SC.1.176. You can use these as a mapping mechanism to see where you stand and see how they match up to CMMC. That's going to wrap up our discussion on the system and communications domain. Thanks for sticking till the end. I know this one was a little hard to get through. If you would like to continue to learn about CMMC in depth, check out some of the resources we've listed on the screen, and they'll be included in the description below as well for your convenience. Intersec Inc. continually works on educational content outside of these videos, and you can see those with our blogs at intersecinc.com/blog, and you can join our mailing list at intersecinc.com/contact us, where we provide relevant updates and changes to CMMC. As I've always reminded you all, the best way to prepare for CMMC certification and this enduring process is to practice, and that can only be done by taking action, which we provide at our platform, www.securitycompliance.io. There, you can go ahead and take a free self-assessment on your current standing with CMMC, all the information that we've discussed, and generate a free gap analysis report to indicate where your gaps lie in achieving CMMC certification. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving us a like, as that helps us, and subscribe for more content if you would like to see more from us. Turn on post notifications so you can be alerted the next time we post. Next time, we'll be focusing on the next domain, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching.